Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to this 15mm experimental project. Yeah, I'm taking the science fiction models from Archvillaingames and I'm trying to scale them down 50%, which will make them about 15mm scale, to see whether it's feasible, and it's kind of feasible. Whether it's paintable, well, if you watch the previous video, I'll put a link up here when I did the Demon, is it Demon Star, the Reckoning faction? It's definitely paintable, although they are very, very small in terms of details. And whether they can actually be used on the table without breaking everything. Well, in the previous video with the Demon Star, I did actually break a few of the weapons off while I was painting, and with this second warband, which are called the Ghult, I'm a little bit worried because there are swords and there is a very, very thin-handled hammer on this guy here, which I am very, very worried about. But we shall try it and see. I've printed them out. I'm going to get them painted up so then I can use the two armies into games of Battle Rune or Kill Team or things like that. Now, before we continue, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Would really appreciate that. Okay, so what have we got here? Well, we've got a small force of the Ghult clan, which I think was, if I remember correctly, the May Patreon Sci-Fi package or set from Archvillaingames. I've printed out a selection, not a huge selection. I think I printed more of the Demon Star, but I've printed out these guys here for the Ghult clan force. Again, there's plenty here for a skirmish-sized game in Battle Rune. What have we got? Well, we've got 5 Kern. These are like the basic sort of. I think these would probably class as the heavy infantry. They do have, I think, 5 other sort of figures this size called Berserkers, which I think would class as the light infantry. So you got these guys here. I printed off the 4 basic guys, which are these guys there. And there is also like a squad leader. I suppose you could also use him as a captain or maybe as the character in Battle Rune, I forgot the name. And this is actually called a Kern Lurch. I can't pronounce it. I did look online how to pronounce these names. Lurch, I think it's called a Lurch. Laoch. It's a Celtic word for warrior. Yeah, so this is the Kern. I mean, Kern is Irish for warband or troop. See, I've done a bit of research on this. And what you have here, the Ghult, is basically it's inspired by, I suppose you would call them Celtic Orcs. Because they definitely have, if you look at the faces and some of the figures, they definitely have that sort of orcish face, very reminiscent of World of Warcraft, which actually, I did find out that Ghult is the name of a World of Warcraft orc character. Huh, the things you find out, huh? What else have we got? I also printed out 3 Galloglass models. These will be interchangeable depending on which models I want to use. I think with like a skirmish force, the small games, I don't think I can have all 3 because they cost too many points. But there's definitely some variety in terms of weapons. So this is 1. And again, I did look up Galloglass. Galloglass were elite mercenary warriors of Norse Gaelic clans. There you go. There's that Celtic link again. So this is another guy, another Galloglass warrior. And you can see they are a bit bigger than the... Come on. There you go. They are a bit bigger than the normal troops. And the third guy is this one here with some kind of power fist. There you go. Running along. Again, if you don't know whether it will focus in on the face. The face has kind of like tusks, very small sort of tusks, not overly done, but it does give a kind of orcish feel to the characters. And at the back here, we actually have two, here we go, Slaw, or Slough, I think they're called. Yeah, these are like the real sort of dreadnought Star Warriors here. Maybe this guy's face will give us a bit of a clue as to the orcish inspiration. But yeah, so I got two of these Slaw or Slough. This is the one I had the problems with the printing. He's supposed to have like a claw here, like a lightning claw sort of thing, but the claws all broke off. So what I did was I just went through my bits boxes and I found a piece of plastic, a little bit of, it was actually a piece of sprue. Was it a piece of sprue? I think it may have been the top of a standard, but I just put that on the end of his fist. It kind of looks like a power fist now, so that'll do. So yeah, so these are the guys. Lovely detail. Again, but this is one of the things that's a concern as I'm scaling these down 50%, is how much of the detail I'm actually losing. Because archvillaingames, their miniatures are highly detailed. And I kind of went a little bit crazy with these and also the Demon Star figures, trying to support every single island. And that was just crazy because my supports were just impossible, well, almost impossible because I did it, but they were terrible to remove because there was so many of them because of all the different little islands. So I'm thinking that if I do a third, fourth, fifth army for these guys, not these guys, but the other science fiction factions, I may not be so anal in terms of trying to support everything. That's the plan. But yeah, these are the guys I've got here. Now, with the Demon Star figures in the Demon Star video, I did mention that when I primed these guys with the white spray primer, I did these at the same time as the Demon Star figures. And again, we do have a problem with, I don't know whether you can see on the, camera well, but we do have a problem with a very rough, sort of grainy finish. I think the sword is terrible. If you look, again, I don't know whether you can see the sword, but the surface of the sword looks like it's covered in a layer of sand. It's really rough, and that again is from the primer. Again, over here in Southeast Asia, we do have very high humidity all day and all night, so spraying can sometimes be a problem. And when I was painting the Demon Star, I did have problems with the rough surface at times. So what I'm thinking is, before I start painting, I'm thinking that I'll actually give these guys a coat of the old Minwax wood stain. I use the cherry one. I do have a couple of different colours of this, but this is the one I'm using most of the time. It's gonna last for years. You see, this will also give it, I think it's a polyurethane coating as well, which will, I'm hoping, reduce the effect of the rough surface and make it smoother and allow the speed paints to flow better. So again, this is an experimental project. We're experimenting with scaling down the archvillain figures 50%, but I'm also going to be experimenting again with this bad surface, whether this will make a difference. I'm also hoping that by applying this, I'm going to get a starting, I would say a starting primer, which is more along the lines of what we do when we do the Zenithal priming, where you have the dark areas and the light areas, and then the speed paint can actually have the shading already. That's the plan. That's the plan. After we do this, we're going to have to see how these paints actually go and actually work. But this is an experiment. Now, I have pulled out some paints that I'm thinking about using at the moment. Hardened leather for all the pouches and possibly the cloaks. For the skin, I'll come to the skin in a second. For the armor, I'm thinking possibly a 50-50 mix of Runic Grey and Gravelord Grey. Because the thing is, I think Gravelord Grey is going to be too dark, and I think Runic Grey is going to be a bit too light. So I'm thinking a 1-to-1 mix of these, and then adding a little bit of the medium as well to kind of make it flow a little bit better. Again, it's going to be a bit of an experiment. Now, regarding the skin, like I say, I think these guys were inspired to be Celtic orcs. So I'm thinking, obviously, green for the skin. I mean, I could go brown, but I'm looking at things like the clothing, the fur, the cloaks as being brown. So I don't want to have too much brown. I'm thinking green for the skin. Now, I've just received from my friendly local game store, Wolf's Game Store in Malaysia. I just received the Speed Paint Most Wanted Set 2.0, and I was really thinking about using this forest sprite color. Yeah, that was the plan. That's what I was thinking. But it wasn't in here. In this box, I didn't get the forest sprite. It was missing. What I got instead was a malignant green, which I've already got 1.0 version. So yeah, that plan kind of went out the window. So now I've got a choice. I can either go with the malignant green, if it focuses. That's one choice. Or maybe a greeny brown, like the desolate brown. Or I go for the aptly named orc skin. Now, initially I didn't want to use the orc skin because it looks a bit dark, and at this scale figures, I'm kind of leaning towards more sort of lighter colours. But I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about that. I have contacted Army Painter to try and get them to send me the correct paint, that forest sprite. But I don't know whether it's gonna arrive in time. I'm hoping. I mean, I hope they do send me it because it was a mistake on their part. But I don't think it's gonna. If they do send me the correct paint, I'm not sure whether it's going to be in time to paint these guys. I mean, there's not a lot of flesh. I mean, you got some hands, some arms, maybe parts of the leg, some faces. I mean, obviously not this figure. This figure's pretty well armored, but yeah. But that's the plan. So what I will do is I will start painting these guys. I'm thinking like I said, a medium grey armor, green skin. That's the plan. What could go wrong? So what I will do is I will come back and record when these guys are in progress and then when they are finished. Right, some work in progress update footage. I did prime. After priming, I did actually put some of this wood finish on the figures. And then I did do the sort of armor. Now the Minwax, the wood stain, did actually give a slightly more smooth finish. It didn't get rid of the problem with the primer, the rough surface completely, but it did improve it a little bit. However, for the armor, I was planning to have a kind of medium grey. So I was planning to use 1 part Gravelord, 1 part Runic, and then 1 part Speed Paint Medium. Yeah, that didn't really work. It was still a bit too light, and by adding the extra medium on top of that wood stain finish, the paint was going too smoothly. It was very, very runny. It wasn't actually staying on the surface very well at all. So what I've done was, I forgot about those. I didn't worry about those. I just went ahead and used just Gravelord Grey on its own. I was thinking that this would be a bit too dark, but it actually turned out okay. So it's dark enough that it's going to give me some. Again, you can see it has a little bit of highlighting on the raised areas. I think I need to just sort of embellish it a little bit more on the highlight areas. Let's have a look at the back of the guy. But yeah, I think the Gravelord Grey was okay. It was fine. So I've done all the armor for all the models, getting them all done. Again, it's a little bit splotchy in places, but yeah, I didn't take it off of that plate there. There's a big splodge right in the middle of that plate. Damn it. But yeah, so what I'll do now is I'll probably do the other base colors before I start doing any highlighting. So I'm going to do things like the green. For the green, I'm going to try malignant green first, because I'm a little bit worried that if I use something like orc skin, focus, it's going to be a bit too dark and it's going to be too similar to the grey that I've already painted on, dark versus dark. I think if I try to use malignant green as the skin colour, again, the paint that I wanted to use, the Forest Sprite, yeah, I haven't, well, I heard back from Army Painter they were going to give me a refund using PayPal. They didn't want to send me the paint, but I've kind of replied saying, no, I want the paint. So I'm hoping that they're going to send me the correct one. But I think I'm going to use this one for the skin, because I want the skin to kind of stand out a little bit. There's not a lot of skin on these figures. It's mostly armor, cloaks, fur. But I think I want the skin to kind of stand out a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead with the malignant. Still going to do the fur in hardened leather, I think. So yeah, this is the current work in progress. I'm still really worried about this hammer. That is so thin and delicate, but yeah, the armor, the grey for the armor has come out really well. Now, with Archvillaingames and their science fiction, if you look at their reference pictures that they release with the figures, you'll see that pretty much every army has grey armor. I think it's one that has blue, but apart from that, every army seems to have some variant of grey armor. I'm trying not to do that. I'm trying to have every army have a different colour for the armor, but we'll see how it goes. But these guys are grey. Yeah, a little bit worried about that sword. That sword is really rough. Maybe I'll do some kind of paint effect on it so that the rough looks as if it's supposed to be there. Again, it's a primer problem. But yeah, I think the Gravelord Grey has come okay, but I do need to highlight the armor. Next up, I'll probably do the skin. I mean, I should have done the skin first, but I really wanted to see how the armor was going to turn out. So I'll try and do the skin next, and then the furs and everything else. Then the highlights, and I will be back with the finished figures. Okay, we have in front of us well, I'm going to call them finished. There's a bit more work I can actually do on these in terms of the highlighting, I think, but I'm going to call them done. I need to get on and get some battle reports done. So what we have in front of us here is the miniatures that I showed you in the previous parts of this video, but I also printed up and painted up a couple of Berserker models, which are like the light infantry for the Ghult, for two reasons: to give me some options, some more cheap troops that I can use, but also as potential character models for the champion. I was planning to use either let's see if I can say it right, Lurch, the Kern Lurch as the champion, as the leader. I was also considering using one of the Galloglass as the leader, but this also gives me another option if I can use one of these guys, because they do kind of look like characters. Kinda. Is he going to focus? Come on, focus. There you go. They do kind of look like characters in their little way. So yeah, it's just a couple of extras that I added to the painting. So these are now all done. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm not 100% happy with how they turned out. They are very grey. They are very dark. Maybe I could have used a different colour for the base, but the way that the bases have been sculpted, it really kind of wants to be, just sort of grey rock. But yeah, so what we have here, again, we have our 3 Galloglass, which are like elite, large infantry. We have 2, how do you pronounce this, Slough or Slaw warriors, which are kind of like Terminator-style warriors, the real heavy sort of infantry. We've got Kerns, which are kind of like the normal infantry or the heavy infantry. We've got the Kern Lurch, which is like the leader. And we've got 2 Berserkers here. So altogether, this is actually in Battle Rune 25 points. When we come to do Battle Rune game reports, battle reports later, as I actually use these in games, we'll actually be doing different size games. Battle Rune at the moment it is in alpha. but they're planning to have 3 size of games. First is Skirmish, which will give you basically 15 shards to purchase units. Second is Battle, which is 25 shards, and then War, which is 40 shards. So you've got a decent scaling in terms of games from the skirmish, small skirmishes, up to the larger battles where you could have maybe 15 to maybe 25 models. So how did they come out? Well, let's start with the Kerns, the basic troops here. They came out okay. I did end up using the Malignant Green for the skin, and it came out okay. Actually, it's a bit lighter than I was planning. I was planning to use what was the name of it? Forest Sprite from the Speed Paint 2.0 box, but it wasn't in the box. It was missing from my box, and Army Painter are refusing to send me a replacement. So I don't know. They want to send me a refund through PayPal, but the thing is, over here, PayPal is not preferred because there's a lot of scamming, a lot of dodgy dealings going on with PayPal in this area. So, yeah. But yeah, they're refusing to send me a replacement bottle, which is a little bit upsetting. But yeah, that's one of the Kern there. The second Kern with a helmet. The rifle he's holding has kind of like a fuel canister underneath, so I don't know whether it's like a rifle with maybe some kind of flamethrower attachment underneath. For the fur and the hair, I did use hardened leather. I highlighted actually with Wonder Blonde Army Painter from one of their Zombicide sets. And for the cloaks, I actually used orc skin from their Speed Paint range, orc skin. These have been sort of designed as Celtic orcs, so I could have gone with the Shamrock Green from the new 2.0 set, but orc skin works really nicely for the cloaks. So yeah, so these are all done. The next Kern I've got to be ultra careful with because he's got this very, very delicate hammer. Yeah, that's gonna break off at some point. I know it's gonna break off at some point. It's so delicate. And again, the cloak, let's move him around, being very careful. Cloaks came out really nice. So that's Hammer Boy. Hammer time. And we got this guy here. For this guy, the crest of his helmet actually broke off as I was dry brushing. Yeah, that's how delicate these things can be. Yeah, and like I say, I did have a problem with these miniatures in terms of the primer giving me a rough finish. You can see that on the gun here. Yeah, so this guy doesn't have a cloak, but he does have like a nice little skirt thing going on there. Then we've got the Kern, oh god, Lurch. Apparently that's how you're supposed to say it. But yeah, I tried to make the best of a bad job with his sword. The sword was absolutely terrible in terms of surface roughness. The same with all of his armor, actually. His armor was really bad. And even his cloak, you can see the... Come on. The surface of his cloak was also really, really rough. But again, I've tried to make the best of a bad job. And again, the cloak is that orc green. Yeah, it came out okay. The Berserkers, like I say, there are 5 Berserkers. I printed out 2. I'll probably print out the other 3 just to have the complete set done. But again, I printed these out more in terms of potential champions, so that I can use. Come on, focus. This guy actually as the Kern Lurch, as the leader for the Kern, rather than as the champion, as the Warband champion. So printing these guys kind of gave me a bit of an option, because they do kind of look leaderish. So there's that guy there with the horns, and I printed out another guy that could potentially be a champion. And these guys have like a part of their armor on the back as well. And that really went out of focus just then. I don't know why. Okay, so those are the little guys. And we also have 5 big guys. Let's start with the Gallo Glass. These are like the elite infantry. They are pretty big. I think if you print them 100%, I think these guys are on 50mm bases, so they are pretty hefty. And again, the skin a little bit brighter than I was expecting, again, because I didn't get the right paint in the box. But the Malignant skin's kind of done a decent job. It's just a little bit bright. Apart from the skin, everything's really, again, it's a bit dark. If I was to do these guys again, I would probably do things a little bit different. Maybe not grey everywhere. Maybe lighten up the grey a little bit. Maybe maybe a different colour. The braids on the back came out quite nicely. That's hardened leather, Army Painter speed paint. Bases are very nicely detailed, as you can see. And again, the way that the bases have been designed, it kind of leads you to use grey. Yep. So that's one of the Gallo Glass. The second Gallo Glass is this guy here. He has a rifle and he has like a chain fist. A chain fist here. Now, these figures are pre-varnish. I haven't varnished these yet because, as I mentioned in the previous video when I was talking about the Demon Star figures, over here in Malaysia we do have a problem with the humidity and the heat. So sometimes when you spray, whether it's primer or paint or varnish, the humidity can actually cause problems. With the primer, you saw on some of these figures the rough surface from all the powder effect. And with the varnish, it can sometimes go frosty. So what I'm doing here is I'm showing you all the figures now before I varnish them, just like I did with the Demon Star, in case the varnish screws around and mucks up the figures. But at least you can see them now how they're supposed to be. But yeah, this is another one of the Gallo Glass. And it has a kind of heroic style, a heroic design, heroic pose to it. So this is another potential champion for the Warband. And then we got the third Gallo Glass, which has, what do they call this? A hammer fist. Yeah, it's kind of like a pneumatic powered power fist kind of thing, And yeah, if you look at the face here, you can definitely see the orcish influence to the design for this faction. This one caused a little bit of problem as I was painting him. It's only supported on his heel. That's the only attachment point on the base is on his heel. And as I was painting him, he did break. Yeah, the foot did come off. So I actually had to reattach him. Hopefully it's going to be a stronger bond this time. But yeah, I'm going to be very, very careful with this guy. So yeah, this is the third Gallo Glass model. He's got a rifle there at his side, holstered in some kind of rope. And then the last 2 are the big guys. Now, I'm thinking these are in some kind of Terminator-style armor. I mean, that's how big they are. So these are the Slough or the Slaw warriors. Sort of very heavy infantry kind of thing. There are, I think, 5 different variations of these with different armaments. This is the one with the double-barreled gun and shield. So I'll get closer. There you go. Again, such nice details and such a pain to support. So here we go. So again, I used Gravelord Grey for the armor with a number of dry brushing for bringing out the details. I dry brushed a lighter grey. The shields are metallics, the new Army Painter metallics. Broadsword silver and what was the other one? Can't remember what the other one was. Hoplite gold, I think. Again, shaded and highlighted. So yeah, that's the first of the Slough or Slough. And then the last one is another Slough or Slough. This is the guy with, what do they call this? The Star Fist and Shield. But when I actually, again, I mentioned it earlier in the video, that it's like a lightning fist, a lightning claw, and the claws basically broke off when I was removing the supports. They were just paper thin. So I replaced it with I think it was actually a hammerhead from an old Mantic dwarf, like a spare hammer that I kind of filed down into some kind of shape that was acceptable. Stuck that on the end of his fist. It's now a kind of power fist. That'll do. That'll do. But yeah, Again, very nice details. My paint jobs are not superb. I'm no master painter. I'm a tabletop painter. But I'm trying to show you guys what everybody can do with a little bit of time, a little bit of patience. Everybody can do this. I'm not, like I say, I don't use expensive brushes very much. I normally just use cheap brushes. A lot of my paints are craft paints because they're just cheap. I couldn't afford to keep buying Vallejo and Army Painter and P3. Back in the day I didn't have a lot of money, so I do have a lot of craft paints, and they'll do fine, But yeah, in terms of additions to this, I am planning to do the other 3 Berserkers, just because I want to have the whole set. I'm also thinking of adding one of the Varak models, which are the big guys, to kind of add a little bit of heavy support to this army. But yeah, these guys are pretty much done. So I'm going to varnish these and hopefully they'll turn out. Now, what are we going to do next? Well, I have actually started printing a 3rd force, which are the Hellas faction, sort of Greek-inspired. They could very easily be used as Custodes, or maybe as the Minotaur Space Marine faction in 40k. But yeah, I really like the look of those models, so I've actually started printing out a 3rd faction, which are those, and I'm probably going to do those in a gold color scheme. I also have to plan the campaign. So, for Battle Rune, I have been given the go-ahead by Archvillain to do some Battle Rune games. It is in alpha, so there will be a lot of things changing from the final version. But I'm thinking about doing a special kind of mini-campaign to sort of introduce the game, to bring these figures out. There's something a little bit special rather than just doing a basic game. So I'm also going to be doing, a video for the Hellas faction, painting those up. I'm also going to be doing a video to create the campaign. I'm going to be using a couple of tools for that. And then we'll start doing some battle reports. I kind of want to get the Hellas completed before I start, so that I have them to plug in and play when I need to. So I'm going to varnish these guys. I'll show you the results, good or bad, just quickly after this. So yeah, what time is it now? It's 3 o'clock in the morning. It should be cool enough. It should be less hot, so I can go and varnish these guys outside. Right, I'll be back in a second with the results. Right, varnish is done and it worked. So luckily there was no frosting, no issues, and everything came out lovely jubbly. So here again, this is one of the Gallo glass. I'll just show you a few just to prove that the varnish worked. It isn't always the case. It is a bit of a gamble over here, but yeah, it seems to work okay. So these guys are now done, and they are ready to take the battlefield. But yeah, these guys are done and dusted. They are ready to go, and I'm okay with them. Like I say, I think if I was to do these guys again, I think I would have, I don't know, maybe changed the palette a little bit so that it wasn't so grey. So these are the Ghult clan. archvillaingames shrunk down 50% to be 15mm scale, and they're ready to go. Now, before we get to the display pictures showing you these guys sort of up close and in detail and in their little units, I also, at the same time as I was painting these, I was actually also painting the terrain pieces that I think I showed you in the first video, the prep video. I did print out the archvillaingames Sci-Fi terrain that comes in their Patreon welcome pack. I printed out 8 of the 9 pieces. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly move these guys out of the way, adjust the zoom because the terrain pieces are a bit bigger, and I'll show you what I've done there, and then we'll go for the display pics. Right, so here we have the 8 terrain pieces that I printed and painted from the archvillaingames Sci-Fi welcome pack. I didn't do one One piece is a lot bigger, has a lot more pieces. I just didn't get around to doing that one, but I have here the other 8 pieces that you see. So these were given like a dark grey base coat. They were given a wash and then a bunch of dry brushing. And they've come out okay. I'm not going to go into too much detail on these things. I mean, some of them required a little bit of extra colour. When they had these lights or these vines, I did do a little bit of extra work on some of these, but not a lot. Like I say, it was basically just grey with a bit of dry brushing. Again, a little bit of blue on this one for some kind of indicator lights. I tried to get like a little glow thing going, but not sure if it worked too well, but it's okay. Like I say, it'll be fine. At 15mm, you can get away with a lot of stuff. But yeah, these little terrain pieces are actually really nice. Like I say, they come in the Patreon welcome pack with archvillaingames, and you can print out as many as you want, you know. And like I say, these are actually scaled down at 50%, so at full scale they'll be, you know, good enough for 28mm or 32mm games. This one I was kind of thinking whether to do the roof as wood, but it looked more like metal, to be honest. So I did this one grey as well. So yeah, these are the terrain pieces. Now what I'll do is I'll probably include these in the display pics for the Ghult, so you can see how they match up with the figures that I printed at 50%. Right. Thank you very much for watching. Like I say, I do have the Hellas faction video coming. I've got to print a couple more figures for that, I think, before I paint them up. I've also got the campaign prep to do before I do the battle reports for Battle Rune and bring you the first glimpse of that game, which is currently in alpha. So what you see in any of those videos will be subject to change. Right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Please stay until the end. We have all the display pics and everything coming up. So, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.